All right. Good morning, guys. If you're on my time zone, or good evening if y'all are watching this at a later time. But we are finally the stars have aligned, so to speak, because I've been trying to set this up for quite some time, and there for a while, my computer was the issue. Then we got so caught up with other men jumping in and getting in the line, and I finally reconnected with our guest today. I'm very honored to have Mr. Leon Sonnenburg. I've looked forward to this because we're going to have tales from two different CNCs. He served at CCS and CCN, and he also served after that. He was with FANK. And another interesting tidbit that we'll get some information from, he was an instructor at Longtan, better known as the 1-0 school. So we've got a great show today, and without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Mr. Leon. Mr. Leon, the floor is yours, sir.
Okay, I don't really know what to say other than I went to Vietnam in October 1969. I left in December 1972. I arrived in Cam Bay at the reception center and didn't really know where I was going to go. And everybody had to do a little period of time there doing guard duty and other chores prior to being assigned to your ultimate location. During that period of time, I had thought I was going to go to an A site, but I ran into other people who were in the CNC project, and everyone had, or they had suggested that I go there. And so I said, okay. And when I saw the assignment board, I was going to CCS. So that's how I got into that program. Served at CCS for a while until it was reduced and closed out, basically. Then we had teams that were distributed to CCC and CCN. I was among those that went to CCN. And because we had a Chinese team, or Nungs, they wanted to go because that was more, they felt comfortable up there. So we went as a team, and then we kind of got reorganized because at Bamituit we had 2 Americans per team and 4 in WEDGE, and then at Da Nang I don't know the real reason, but they had 3 Americans per team. So we reorganized in that way for operations there. After that, I went to Camp Longtan, which was the 1-0 school, B-53. Served there for about a year, and then after that, I was assigned to the FANK training program at PTTB down in Longhai, which was the Phuc Tui Training Battalion. I was there until December, and everybody had to leave. So I was reassigned to Fort Devens in Massachusetts. So that's a brief overview of my time in Vietnam.
Alrighty. We're gonna have a lot to talk about today, but excuse me. To start it off, I remember looking over, I believe, a wonderful website, guys. If you're not familiar with it, if you're trying to keep up with SOG men and gear and stories, modernforces.com is a great site. And Mr. Leon was interviewed by them a while back, and his interview is online. And I believe I read that you were you initially thinking or had thought you were going to end up at CCN, or and then you just automatically got to CCS, or did I read that incorrectly?
No, the people that I had talked to encouraged me to go to CCN because that's where they had been assigned, and so I said, okay, that's where I'm going to try to go. without knowing anything about it. And then when I got my orders, it was to CCS. So it was the same program, obviously, and so that's where I went.
So, and by chance, were you one of the guys also that came in contact with Miss Billy Alexander?
Not directly. What had happened was I was in Panama, and I was on a work detail with some other guys, and one of them said that he had just talked to Mrs. Alexander. He had had personal communications with her, and I said, "Well, hey, next time you talk to her, tell her you know somebody that would like to go to Vietnam." And he said, "Okay." And that's the last I thought about it, because that happens all the time. Nothing ever comes of it. Then we find ourselves on another work detail a little while later, and he's talking to somebody, and he turns to me and he says, "Oh, by the way, your orders are en route." I thought, "Oh, okay." And I was trying to figure out, well, how am I going to tell my wife that I have been levied for Vietnam? And when the orders came, they came in a little folder, and there was a note that had to be signed by your wife that said, "I understand that my husband is a volunteer and was not levied for Vietnam." So that was a shocker. But anyway, that's how I ended up being assigned there.
Wow. When I'm trying to, when you got there was in '69. I'm trying to think. Were you? I know, because around that time, and especially in '70, some of the airborne inserts, the static line inserts, were going on. Were you early on at CCS? Did you guys take part in any of the getting airborne qualified? Any of your teams?
No, that happened at CCN.
No. Okay. Who or what team did you get with when you were at CCS?
WEDGE.
WEDGE. Okay. Did you happen to know anybody from around SF or anything, or was it meeting all new people when you got there, the team wise? I mean.
No, there were some that I had known before, and some that I had met at Fort Lewis en route to Vietnam.
Okay. I believe was it Kirby Smith and Mr. Bill Deasy that was on that team with you, or is that up north?
That was north.
North.
Kirby Smith. When I went on the team leader was slips my mind now. Dale
Holder. Oh, okay.
And Dale received orders for Thailand, and so Kirby was his 1-1. I was a strap hanger, and of course there, what the way it worked was you would go out with the two members of the team, and when the team member, the 1-1 had been selected for, I'm getting ahead of myself. The 1-1 had been selected to be 1-0 on a team. Everybody would go out together. The three would go out together, and then the team leader, the 1-0, Dale in this case, would make the decision as to whether he was going to accept the new guy or not. And he decided yes. So Kirby went and took his own team, and I became the 1-1.
Okay. Wow. Now, is this your first team?
Yes, that's WEDGE.
Okay.
And that's Dale, myself, interpreter. The other guys, I know, I remember them, but not by name. The second from the left in the rear is Vivan Loop. And Vivan Loop was the point man and the indigenous team leader. Super guy. All of these guys were super. And the man standing next to me was the interpreter. I think it was Chinyat Song. And a superhuman being. Great guy.
Now, did you say that these were also Nungs, or were these Montagnards at Bami Tui?
Now, the team that I was on, all of these were Chinese
Wow.
ethnics.
Okay. Wow. And I mean, I'm not all that familiar. Was it rare to have a Nung team down south? I didn't remember hearing very many all Nung teams or Nung teams at all, really.
No, that was common.
Wow. Okay. Um, let's see
I don't know
here.
how many there were actually.
Mhm.
I honestly don't even know how many total recon teams there were at CCS. But we were not the only Nung team. They had a pretty sizable community there.
Okay, because they had been around a long time, and they're, I guess later on they had worked so long. I mean, since '65 when it started, that you started seeing them more in a security role, I guess you could say, for all the work they had put in. They had kind of run pretty ragged there at the end.
The
The
Chinese,
numbers. Mhm.
uh, some of them were very young because when you would decide that you needed for whatever, people leave or something, because we never lost anybody on the team while I was there. But people would drift away. And so when you would hire another team member, you would turn to the uh, existing team members, those that you trusted the most, and ask them for recommendations as to who might be hireable. And that was the way we acquired people. But Vivan Luke was the oldest. I have no idea what their real ages were. We had a very young kid everybody called VD Hippie, and he was too young. He would be we would be out in the field, and he would be looking at butterflies, and he'd be distracted by all kinds of things. He was a very young guy. And then you'd end up in a situation where you would decide, we have to do something with VD Hippie. So but because they were friends or relatives of other guys on the team, it was a little bit delicate, and so you'd have to go to them and say, and have a conversation, and hopefully they would agree. And in the cases I'm familiar with, everything worked out quite well. So
So do
hire
you?
no guy.
That's I've always found that very interesting. It's word of mouth vouching, and they definitely, to preserve their honor and make sure everybody knew their tribe was tough. They definitely got good recommendations. Although I'm sure some were, had to be vetted and a little more. But I believe that's the Recon Shack at CCS.
That was company headquarters. Yeah.
Company headquarters. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I've got some black and white photos that Lieutenant Troy Gilly sent me, so I'll try and get some of those up of Bami Tui to show off. May give you some flashbacks to when you were trouncing around the old yard camps and stuff down there.
Yeah.
Do you happen to remember? Oh, I'm sorry.
Huh?
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was just going to say that when I got there, people would refer to the indigenous guys as Sioux, and the only Sioux I had ever heard of were Sioux Indians. Mm-hmm. And when you looked at Bami Tuit, the red clay, or in the rainy season, red mud, and the primitiveness of the camp, I thought, well, they could probably call them Sioux because it's like an old West environment. And of course, that wasn't Sioux. That wasn't the Sioux they were talking about.
Thought that was that is pretty neat. SCU Special Commando Unit called them Sioux, and then the yards and all of them had such a infatuation with the cowboy and Indian movies, the John Wayne movies, and all that. I always thought that how that lined up. That was pretty funny how that was.
No, it's just SCU Sioux. So as best I know.
Do you happen to remember? You mentioned going out on your strap hanging mission. do you remember your first full-fledged mission being on the team and y'all going out? What kind of mission that was?
Well, you had different kinds of missions. So the only ones I were on were reconnaissance missions. So you had, linear reconnaissance, area reconnaissance. Generally, they did not want to, from my observation, they didn't want to reveal to you exactly what they expected you to find, because they wanted you to come back and not be influenced by what you think they want. So anyway, those were, it was the area recon, or more of a linear recon. There were the missions that I ran.
Any interesting finds? I've seen a lot of photos of y'all down there, and coming across base complexes with bunkers dug out with podiums in them, speaking areas, and stuff like that. Any interesting finds like that on your account?
The only one that I can really recall was that we launched out of Quang Loy, and they put us on the ground, and it was kind of a low. It wasn't a valley. It was just a kind of a low area with higher ground on either side. We decided to go in one direction, and we run right into a base camp. Although it had been recently abandoned, they had these squat latrines, and they'd been using these propaganda leaflets as toilet paper. And the houses were on stilts and with bunkers built underneath them. And it didn't necessarily mean they were expecting combat. It was just, or that they were combat people that were occupying the place. It was just, people built bunkers to protect themselves from being collateral damage in fights. Although it was out in the middle of nowhere, so I don't know why they would have anticipated that. But we tried to leave the area and ran into a patrol, and it was getting close to dark, so we were obviously not going to be able to avoid these guys, and we didn't know. And you never know who was all in the area that you're in. So they fired up the area. We called in, and the Blue Max came out. It was Cobra gunships. They fired up the area and extracted it.
Wow. We've got a question about that, and I've just found my Bammy Toohey photos of the red dirt and clay I'll bring up in just a second. But these next few questions are right on par with what we're speaking about, and especially this is going to tie in with the differences in CCS and CCN that'll come up later. But Jason would like to know if you could go over a little bit, what were the rules of going into Cambodia at the time, i.e. no fixed wing, white phosphorus. What were y'all's limitations, so to speak?
I don't know of any prohibition of white phosphorus, but when you would go into an area, you would get a briefing from the two, and he would let you know what enemy known enemy areas that were occupied by the enemy. Getting tongue twisted here. And generally, you would have there was in one area that we went into, and they had identified what they thought was a NVA hospital complex. So that complex was off limits, and if you got caught within, I don't know, whatever the boundaries were that were delineated on the map, then you were not going to get any help. And the only help we had at Bammy Toohey was we had FAC in the air, a light aircraft, O-1s, I think, for the most part, and a single pilot. And he would be on station during the day. At night, you had nobody to communicate with at all. So other than that, though, we ran into trouble one time, and we're taking a break, and of course you don't know what's going on around you. You can't wander around the area and try to determine what's nearby. So we're sitting there, and of course, as a team leader, you're taking notes, and all of a sudden these people start talking and walking by us, and they were NVA. They were in their official gear, in their combat gear, their pith helmets and their green uniforms and everything. So we just froze and looked at each other. And fortunately, these guys walked by and didn't look left or right. They just kept going straight ahead, looking straight ahead. Once they had left, we tried to move, and there was an open area to our right, and there were all kinds of other people coming. So we called the FAC, and we kept him abreast of what was going on. And he kept coming back, and he would say, "Okay, if you need any help," he says, "I'm armed and dangerous." And so finally we did use him, and we came out.
Wow. And y'all are pretty unique in having the Green Hornets with their mini guns and all of that. With basically, as far as I know, they worked the entire span of CCS. I think with y'all.
The gunships did.
Mm-hmm.
Now to my knowledge, they worked northern targets, and when we got their support, when we received their support, it was for the northern targets. Southern targets were supported by a unit, and I do not remember what it is, but a helicopter unit out of, I think, Benoit. And these guys were dedicated. I looked up at the helmet of one of the pilots one time. It says 1-0 running scared. So you can see that they were dedicated to the program. They knew guys, and they identified with you. And they had the older model Charlie gunships, and of course they had the slicks. Out of Bammy to it. Now, by the time I got there, the Green Hornets no longer had their slicks. So we had to rely, in my case at least, the times I ran northern targets, we would use helicopters out of an Army aviation unit in Bammy to it. But the Green Hornets did have the gunships, and they had the mini Gatling guns, the 7.62, on either side of the helicopter, and manipulated by the crew chief and the other man.
Did you have much contact with them in the field, or them picking you up, or did you see them off base at all, or was
no,
it
they
just
were on
strictly?
base. I didn't know any of them. No, they had a separate part of the compound, and I didn't have that much to do with them. Now other people did, but not. I didn't.
Let's see here. While I'm pulling up a photo, this will be good. With you being at CCS and the long lifespan of it, did you happen to either know or hear of men like Jerry Shriver and some of the others like Baby Son while you were there? Of course, you were there and worked with Baby Son, but did you hear any stories about Jerry and some of the guys before you?
The only
Shriver.
one that Shriver had already disappeared by the time I got there. I think he disappeared a couple of months before I got there. I'm not sure exactly what time. The interesting thing about Shriver was, and I did not know him, the dog was there on the compound, but he had a jacket in the club that was in a glass case that had and showed the back of it, and it was all embroidered and said "Fuck you, Von Winjap," and a hand with the finger extended.
Wow, that I've heard that, and something else that he had made it back to the States, either from one of the SOG guys or Martha Ray brought it back. I'm not sure, but I heard that made it back, and that's spoken about a lot by CCS guys that came
jacket.
after Jerry. The jacket, yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah. It was displayed in the on the wall near the pool table.
Let's see here. Do you Jake was wondering, I'll have to look it up too. Do you happen to remember what the facts were working CCS? Were they nails, covey? I can't remember what they were called, to be honest, Jake.
They weren't covey. They were FAC. They were
okay.
Air Force 01 bird dogs, I believe, to the best of my knowledge. They had some rockets suspended under the wings.
I know the 219th Headhunters for a while had some guys attached to y'all, but then I think they all went to CCC and worked exclusively. So I'll have to look into and see if they actually had a name. But always interested in the gunship guys and the airplane pilots laying their bacon in the grease to come help y'all. Brave men.
Yes, very, very. Always good to hear the fact come. Well, even Bambi to it, especially. Always good to hear the fact come up in the morning. At least you had somebody to communicate with if you got in trouble.
I can only imagine. It's especially CCS, like you said, it's a little different ball game down there. Let's see here. I know from previous talks, I can't remember. Did you have any experiences at Cam Duck? Were you? No. Okay. Because I thought I had a photo of you. I don't know if it got mislabeled and what was going on or.
Okay. Well, Cam Duck. Now, see, Cam Duck was up north, right?
Definitely north of BMT. Not really too north, but it was north. Yes, sir.
I'm trying to remember. Cam Duck was overrun at one time, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, sir. This book right here.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And we did launch out of Cam Duck. Yeah. Okay. That was, looks like, I think that was taken at Cam Duck. We had gone there to use it as a temporary launch site because it had been occupied by an American and a Vietnamese unit to do their own operations in the local area. So that's how we ended up there. But what had occurred at Cam Duck, now some of the guys on the team, they remembered it because they had gone to 01 school there.
Oh, that's right. That was the original team leader school location.
Right. But the Indige also trained there.
Oh,
so it was some of the Indige guys that remembered having been there for training.
Wow, that is amazing. And I believe actually now that you think or said that the team was there, I think if we're lucky, cross your fingers, this might be Cam Duck also. With those mountains in the background right on the board.
I've never seen that photo.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, it probably is. It looks like it would be.
That's pretty interesting. And guys, I've not started it. I've looked through it a bunch, but Mr. Jim McElroy, who was at Cam Duck, he wrote this book and he mentions a lot of the SOG men in this and speaking about how they actually came to help him out. Mr. Leon, I'll get this picture to you if you'd like me to.
Yeah, I'd appreciate
I've got it. Absolutely. Wow, we've got a lot of people in here. Cody Elmore, nice to see you this morning. His dad is a Project Delta and Omega veteran.
That was
Jake,
the predecessors.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Jake wanted to ask again. We'll be making our way to it, but when were you at CCN exactly?
It would have been like February of 72 until around I think it was around the end of 72. And that's when I went on down to B-53 or 10 school.
Okay. Someone piped in, and could it have been the Mosquitoes doing FAC work? I have heard that name. Again, I'll have to get into my exclusive CCS history book. By the way, if wanting to learn about CCS, Mr. Leon is mentioned heavily. As y'all can see, all of that is Leon notepads right there. So that's the book to get. Let's see here. We've got someone who actually served with you, sir. Mr. Dan Zahodi served with Leon on SF-37 Combat Diver A-15 in the Canal Zone of Panama.
Yes. Hello, Dan.
That's great to have
We
him on.
communicate on email.
Wow, that's great. We Mr. Dan, we were actually just looking at some of y'all's photos that we'll be bringing up a little later of clearing 2 ships that ran aground. So very glad to have you here. Let's see here. We're letting some questions come up. We're all over the place, but it's okay. Did you ever hear of a Ray Matthews, a Jay Stein, or a Mike Minzy in SF?
Yes, I know Mike Minzy. Now the other 2 gentlemen I never ran across, but Mike Minzy, yes.
Okay. Was he
at BAMI too? He worked with the Mountain Yard team, and he was called Minzy Malo.
Okay. Wow.
Now I don't know what that means, but they incorporated his name into with those 2 other words.
Wow, that's so neat. Let's see. I know I've got a note here. Okay, so you mentioned. Do you know how in that span of time while you were at CCS? I'm not going to transition too long. Or there, I've got a few more questions. But do you have a rough estimate of how many times you and Wedge went into the field? What your operational tempo was like?
I would say about 5 or 6 times. I can't be sure. I strap hanged on 1, but I didn't keep track of them. I should have kept a diary, I'm sure, but I didn't.
I've heard that numerous times, guys saying, God, if I only would have known now to just write some of this stuff down.
Yeah.
Cody is asking, Minzy, the same one who ran in El Salvador?
No, I don't think so.
No, not Mike Minzy.
Now, if we're talking about Minzy at CCS.
I think you might be thinking of Pete Nimsey Low. Peter Nims.
Nims.
Yeah, I think we've got a crossed wire here. He also went north. Yeah. I'm not familiar, Frank, with.
Then Pete Minzy got out of the Army, I think, after he returned.
I believe you're correct.
All right. So then I guess I don't know Mike Minzy.
I don't either. I'm sorry, Frank. I was hoping maybe someone would, but I do not know. While we're talking CCS, don't want to change too much because there's some stuff. What were your weapons like? Were you a Car 15 man? Did you ever use the AK-47? What was your loadout and your gear like?
No, I used the Car 15.
Car 15.
The only AK-47 on the team was the point man, V. Van Loop, because the point man would dress in North Vietnamese uniform, carry a weapon, look as much like the bad guys as possible, because he was the most likely to make initial contact. Other than the traditional gear, I wore a BAR belt initially because I liked the capacity of the pockets. Had 3 pockets on either side, and it was open in the back so that it didn't interfere with the rucksack. Because if you had things in the back, your rucksack would get caught on top of them. You'd constantly be struggling with it. But the American one I had finally deteriorated. And I got another one, but it was a strange bright green color. And it turned out it was made in South Korea. And the buckle broke before too long. So I ended up going to and using the same kind of configuration as most of the people there, and that was the canteen covers, because you could get a bunch of magazines in a canteen cover.
How many rounds were you carrying, or I should say, how many magazines were you carrying regularly?
I think you could get 7 magazines in each
canteen cover.
Canteen cover. So I had 2 on one side, 1 on the other side, and then the fourth canteen cover would be for the emergency signaling equipment.
Wow. Okay, so you were 14 in between. You'd say 14 and 20 something at least.
Magazines.
Mm-hmm.
7, 14, 20. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It would have been more like 20 something.
20 something. Okay. I didn't know if you were I know some of the team leaders, and this wasn't often. Did you ever? Well, and there again, you weren't marking targets. I hear guys saying they'd use tracers to mark targets if y'all had air up or anything. Did you ever do anything like that? Have a tracer mag to where if you needed to point something out or anything like that?
No.
No.
The reason for that is that tracer rounds indicate where you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I knew that some guys, I'd heard, I don't know, but I had heard that there were people that like to use a tracer round indicating that their magazine was getting empty, which I also thought was not too good an idea.
Yeah.
Because that also, if they're knowledgeable about what your techniques are, then it says, okay.
He's out, and let's, yeah.
Get him. Now, I don't know but I see the logic of doing it, but I never did myself.
I always thought it sounded, in theory, pretty good, especially if, you've got, air cover and all that. But like you said, just being out there, that'll definitely give your position away mighty quick.
Well, air cover, if they can see the ground, and we could get now the preferable thing for me, and I think everybody, would have been the mirror, because it's passive. You're actually reflecting something, but unless the guy can see the glint on your mirror, they don't know where you are. But it does definitely identify your location to the man in the air. And then, of course, you give a polar plot from there, from me, direction, distance, and a brief description of what the terrain looks like.
So it sounds like you've used the mirror a few times then
Yes.
Okay. Did you there again, differences? You've got the signal panel, the mirror, the flare, or just went blank on the other one that people use. But did you feel like that was the best way, and B, probably the safest way to not give away your position to the enemy, but make sure your FAT gets your exact position?
Yeah, panels were hard our panels were reduced in size, and I got to fly later on. There was some difficulty when I was at Longton. There was they were having some difficulty with the air support, not being able to see them on the ground. And so I flew with a C-119. I forget whether it's Shadow or whatever they call it. It was a daylight. Interesting, a very interesting opportunity to fly with the Air Force guys and see what it was like from their perspective. And I discovered that during that flight, we could. There was a Vietnamese team that was in trouble, so they went to support that team, and they had this technology in there, screens and things like that. And I don't know exactly what it was that they were trying to spot these guys on the ground. And I looked down, I could see the panel. It was just a little orange dot, but I could not make the guys in the air see it because they didn't really know what they were looking for. They were looking for something bigger, I guess, I'm sure, that stood out. So that the panels were just too small to be effective if your support was too far away from you, too high in the air.
And especially as you indicated, if they're not knowing what to key in on, them not being on the ground, like you
Now,
said.
the FAC, it's a different story because he would get closer to the ground, and he did know what he was looking for. And you might be able to, pop a panel and make it look like it was blinking and catch his attention. But if they were like a fixed wing aircraft, an Air Force airplane high in the air, no, never going to see it.
Yeah, I've always heard, that's always iffy. I've heard of guys going through literally everything trying to make sure they didn't have to use a flare or come up on the radio or what have you, and then finally they had to because the guys just couldn't see the panel either because the jungle or they just couldn't get a good eye, and they finally had to do a pin flare and get out, and it caused the ruckus to get out of there from that.
Pin flares, so give an idea of where your general location, but you can't identify, your specific location with a flare like you can with a
mirror.
And once you got the guy close enough to you, then of course you could kind of
bring him in, so to speak.
You could talk him over to you.
With David would like to know, in Cambodia, were you using any of the fish hook tactical maneuvers, or what were y'all using for dog legs or anything like that while y'all were on patrols?
No, we tried to follow. We just tried to take random routes that we felt would help us in our mission. And of course we tried to stick to heavier terrain, stay off of natural lines of drift. So no streams, no ridge lines, nothing like that. Try to stay in thicker terrain. And everybody was trained to go very slowly and very meticulously and carefully through vegetation so as not to make noise, not to break things and leave trails and things. So it took a lot of patience.
Yeah.
There was only one time that we did, I don't know if you call it a dog leg. I think they called it a broken arrow, but I'm not sure. But we went out on a ice strap hanged with another team that they wanted to try to get PW from this is out of Bamituit. They wanted to try to get a POW off the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which of course is a whole series of trails and stream beds and all kinds of things that was pretty wide in some places. And they could never get close to the trail or by walking in from Vietnam, trying to get in from Vietnam. So they took us on the far side, further into I guess it was Cambodia. And we walked then back towards Vietnam to start making contact with the trail complex. And we found a place that looked lucrative, and we set up an ambush. And then because we were a heavier team, of course, we were split up and we had rear security. And then we got a call saying that the bad guys had walked between those of us on the assault element and the people in the rear security. So we decided that it was time to leave. So we blew the claymores because we didn't want to take a chance of leaving them for them, and left. And in the progress, people started chasing us, and the aviation cover would tell the team when to brake right, brake left, and we try to go at like a 90-degree angle from the direction that we had been traveling. And that allowed them then to just go and get everybody that was following us or take them under fire. And that's the only time I thought of anything or was involved in anything where we actually purposely changed direction in a particular way.
Wow. We've got a few interesting questions come up. Did you ever extract using the spy rigs?
No, we didn't have spy rigs. We had ladders and we had stable rigs by the time I got there. And so, they had earlier iterations of these extraction like the Hansen rig and that.
McGuire.
Yeah. But by the time I got there, they had the McGuire. By the time I got there, we had the stable rig, and I never extracted by stable. I extracted by ladder.
What was that like coming out on a ladder? I bet that had to be pretty nerve-wracking especially if the NVA were on the ground and were watching y'all go out, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, it was uncomfortable. Yeah.
And did y'all have any precautions to make sure no one fell off? Could y'all click in, or did y'all have anything, or were y'all?
Yeah. If you look at the web gear or the equipment as you would carry it, on one side you have a strobe light, and another side you have a little gas mask that was good for CS or CN. It was for riot control agents. And you also had a snap link. And that snap link on your chest was what you snapped into, secured yourself to the center strand in the ladder, because it had a steel cable that went down either side and down in the center. So you'd straddle the center strand and lock in with your snap link.
That even with a click in, that still sounds like that would be quite nerve-wracking, especially if the MDA is right below you.
Well, and you don't know if the something's gonna happen to the helicopter, or you're going with it. Did you ever talk to a guy named Bill Deasy?
No, I've spoken to his brother, but not Mr. Bill yet. I'm trying to get up with him though.
Bill, I communicate with Bill all the time. He got out of the Army, as after Vietnam. He pursued other career field. But Bill had a couple of experiences that he would kind of elaborate. He could better elaborate to you about his experience trying to extract out of on a ladder and the helicopter being shot down.
Gosh, I get him mixed up. Isn't Mr. Bill the one that he was shot in his car 15 and it went in the stock, or was that a different?
No, same. Bill, yeah, the round went right behind the bolt assist. He was firing from the shoulder, and with the stock extended, and somebody off to his right fired at him, and the round slammed into that narrow little rod that was the stock, and slammed it into his face. So he had two bad experiences. One was that, and the other was the helicopter, where he almost burned to death. He was trapped in the ladder, and one of the crew chiefs, who remains a friend of his today. Yeah, that's it. That's Bill and his rifle.
I've last year, last year during SOAR, I actually heard that story from Lieutenant Bob Boast speaking about that.
Yeah.
And he was around or either something, and he saw the crewman that lifted the helicopter up, and even hearing that secondhand from his experiences, I I was just flabbergasted that he survived that, let alone being that close to being shot in the face, and then his helicopter incident. Good Lord.
Well, there's 2 different incidents, but he continued to work.
What a man. What a man.
But if you get the chance to talk to him, I think you'll find his experiences interesting. I know we knew each other. We knew each other in Panama prior to going to Vietnam. We didn't work on the same teams and at Bamituit, but we were on the same team in Da Nang, because there had to be 3 of us. So Kirby Smith, myself, and Bill.
And we're going to be transferring or trading chapters here. I know I've got a few questions for because I could spend all day talking about BMT. Talk a little bit about 1-0 school, but Jason had a question. Did you have anything, any missions, either CCS or CCN, since it's dealing with this, where y'all worked with any technology, wiretaps, Air Force sensors, or anything of the like?
We didn't know.
Okay. Those are always interesting ones to hear about, guys getting out there and hearing some weird stuff on the wiretap or finding telephone poles rigged, just wild. Here's one before I get into that. Any night patrols or night ambushes using a starlight?
No, we didn't try to do anything like that until I was in FANC.
Very another interesting chapter of your life. Going into because we're already in an hour. With you going now, you go to teach at 1-0 school in between CCS and CCN. Is that correct?
No. Well, I went directly from CCS to CCN. After I left CCN, I went to 1-0 school. Then from 1-0 school, I went down to FANC.
Okay. That's fine. That's where I got mixed up. Okay, well then we'll go into CCN for a bit, because I'm people already starting to wonder and ask questions about that. So I believe 1970 brings all of that about to where teams are CCS is basically, I guess, starting to slow down mission tempo and close recon out and turn it to the Vietnamese. And is it the 3 of you off of your team that you just mentioned, and y'all decide to go together with your Indige as a full team to CCN?
Yes, we did. Yeah, we asked the guys, did they want to go? Just about all of them wanted to go. I think Vivan Loop stayed behind because of his family. But the others went with us. And then when Kirby Smith was on a different team, and some of his people went with him. And so when we had to reorganize, and then so that we had Kirby, me, and Bill, then we all 3 had been on different teams at Bamituit. So we kind of mixed the indigenous soldiers between those, at least 2 of the teams. I don't know if the team Bill was on came up or not, but some of the guys with Kirby came up, and those with me and
Kirby and Bill.
No, the guy that was my 1-1 was cannot remember.
Not DC. Wasn't Gassman yet, was it?
No, Fred and I were not on the same team.
Well, heck, I can't remember anybody besides Bill and Kirby, so we'll just have to chalk it up to can't remember. CRS.
He's a great guy. Great guy. Usually I don't forget him.
Well, I'll put it in post whenever we figure out his name. It'll end up hitting one of us here soon. So when you guys get there, and this is always interesting because you're in 2 totally different AOs. I mean, you're skipping Cambodia and moving from CCS to North, skipping Central. Did y'all know the significance of that? How much it would be a difference, or did y'all take extra time to get acclimated, training, or anything like that? What was that like getting to CCN?
Well, the training is basically the same. Operationally, things were different, and the AOs are different. The geography was different, the terrain, but operationally things were different. And as I was saying, is that each of us came up organized into two Americans per team. Well, when we got after we got there, what was his? Anyway, the guy that was my 1-1 ran into a guy at CCN that was a friend of his, and he had an opening on his team, and so he asked if he could go and be on that and join him on that team. I said, yeah, certainly. So some of the people, the way we were organized before, some of the people saw it, wanted to join other people, and so we ended up, 3 of us, all knowing each other and saying, okay, even though we had never, Kirby and I had worked together before, but I had never worked with Bill, and so the 3 of us ended up on the same team. And then the mix of the indigenous soldiers, the Chinese, from at least 2 of the teams, maybe 1 or 2 from the team Bill was on as well.
Okay, wow.
Randy
Landers. Randy Landers.
Right.
Okay.
Randy Landers was the 1-1 when I was 1-0 on Team Wedge.
Can't believe I forgot that, because I'm sitting here with
I can't believe I forgot that.
Oh man. So how you and I mentioned earlier, I had forgotten that it was CCN where y'all were airborne qualified. How soon did that pop up? Did y'all go to the field before this, or was this that initial training that y'all did?
No, we'd gone to the field before that, and then we were notified that they wanted to go to alert us to the possibility of being selected for a static line insert. So they sent us down to Longton for static line training.
Okay. And
but
I've got
a mission.
Oh, okay. I've actually got a picture. I think this is y'all training.
Yeah. So that's Bill from left to right. Bill, myself. That's the other song. I don't remember which song was which. And then some of these guys here were, he was from Bammy to it. And some of these guys, and then the guy down in the lower corner where you have your cursor is I think Chinyet song. He was the interpreter on Team Wedge. Oh, Vivan Luke Wood did go. He's over on the far right. So yeah, and then Kirby is between the 2 guys there on the far right. Mm-hmm.
Wow, Mr. Kirby, he's quite the operator. He went on to have quite the career in the military even afterwards.
Yes, he did.
What was your initial mission like at CCN? What was it? I mean, I know you're not going to be shocked or anything, but was it a little bit of a eye opener on how different Cambodia was versus Laos, northern Laos?
To be quite honest, we never stayed long enough on the ground to be able to, for me to be able to tell you.
Wow.
Because things were, one of the things that happened was we had gone to Camduck. And so we're standing, we're at Camduck, and we're getting ready to go in, and the helicopter crew comes from, I don't know what unit, I don't remember what unit, but they came, and one of the guys had a SF combat patch, one of the pilots. So I went over and I asked him, do you know what we're going to do? And he said, no. we were told we were going to get a briefing when we got here. Well, there was no briefing. So they really, he and I talked and told him what we were planning on doing, where we were going. And that was out of Camduck. And another one was we went out of Chulai, I think. And so that's on the coast. I think that's where the Marical division was. And we were in these big revetments. They put us in there with folding cots, pre-mission. And when we left, the concept of the operation was that we were supposed to go to Camduck, and I'd been there before, and then land, refuel, and then continue on into the AO in Laos. Well, we didn't have our gear on. We were going to put it on when we got off the helicopter while they refueled. When we got over Camduck, I recognized it. And then, so we're circling around. And all of a sudden, these helicopters start to stack up, side to side, front to rear. And so I pulled on the door gunner's pant leg, and I indicate, are we going down? And he said, no. And he pointed in the direction of flight. I said, oh, crap. So I got a hold of Kirby right away, and I said, we're going in. So we got our gear on. And when I knew when we crossed the border, because the door gunner I was sitting next to took the belt out of his gun, and then sat back and relaxed. He had obviously felt he had just left the war zone. So, and I don't remember which was which, but on one of them, they tried to land on a cultivated field. Had a wood line on one side and a deep ravine going off on that side. And the other side were cultivated fields, or a cultivated field, and people had dropped their tools on the top of the rows. So obviously they had been working right prior to us getting there. And as he was trying to land at the edge of the tree line, all of a sudden people opened up from the ground, and the helicopter, so we're firing back at these people, and the helicopter rolls over on one side, and I thought, oh, and goes down. And what he did was go down into that notch, into that canyon. And I thought, oh crap, this is it. We're going in. But we didn't. The helicopter was shot up pretty good, but I got out of it okay.
So, I mean, right then you said you saw tools that were dropped. All right, do you think they heard the farming tools? Do you think they heard, or do you think they had been warned, get out, because the NVA was setting up an ambush waiting on y'all to land?
No, I think they heard us coming in.
Okay. Still, though, I mean, for
Again,
them to be,
I can't know that for certain, but I think so.
Man, oh man. What were the size? Was there any difference in the size of your team at CCS versus up north? Were y'all still running the same size patrols? How many men were on your team?
I honestly can't remember. At Bamituit, we had four Indige and 2 Americans. And at CCN, we had 3 Americans. So I want to say, although I cannot say positively for sure, that there were 3 Indige. That it was a 6-man team. You could have 3 people in each door. And, everybody could get in and out on a single helicopter.
We've got 11, 8, 9, 10. I've got 11 of y'all at Airborne training, although I know teams didn't take everyone out, but there's 11 on here. So I was just curious if y'all ever ran heavy or anything like that with more than your 8 or 7 or 8 man
We didn't.
patrol.
We didn't. Some did. Joe Walker
Oh, yeah.
ran heavy.
Ed Walkoff with New York, he copied or was inspired by Joe Walker to also run heavy.
Okay. Yeah. No, we were strictly recon. And so we tried to keep it as simple as possible.
And you mentioning, you were how you weren't on the ground that long because of, how different it is. It seems like it says y'all ran the first month or so y'all were there that y'all ended up running about 5 or 6 missions.
At CCN?
Mm-hmm.
No, we didn't run that many. I strap hanged on one. Kirby and Bill did go out on one without me because I had to go to the Trang for a infected tooth, I think it was.
Okay, that would make sense then. So, wow. Okay. Let's see here. When did Mr. Well, we'll get to your 1-0 because that'll probably take up the end of the show. What did you, before teaching at 1-0 school, did you went through 1-0 school as a student, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was wondering because I believe I've got a shot at you at 1-0 school as a student and then one while you were teaching. But can you explain a little bit I guess the best thing, what's the differences in other than teaching that you noticed the differences of when you went through, here you are going through, from when you went through to versus when you started teaching? Was there a noticeable difference in the curriculum?
Not in the curriculum, because we were teaching the basics, and the actual operational requirements for each site were different. The terrain was different, as you noticed. The organization of the team was different. The enemy was different. So the principles were taught at 1-0 school, but not, trying to stay away from anything that was that would have been site specific or location specific.
Okay, let's see. And here you are. I believe you are instructing now. This is Mr. William Lewis, RT West Virginia, who's in the online in the Facebook group with us. He was in this class with you. Bob Castillo, Andre Smith.
No, Andre's in the upper left-hand corner up there.
Up here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow. Gosh, I'm not familiar. Don Kelly, I believe.
Don Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar.
Here, the man in the center down here, Elia, I think was his name.
Oh, Johnny. Yeah. Okay. That was quite the group. What are the class times like? How long is each each class, so to speak?
I don't know. It was several weeks because we go through all the training, and then of course you had a final exercise.
A actual true to the bone live fire. You're out on a mission, so to speak.
Yeah, you'd receive a mission and go out into the AO. That was in the Lone Pond air vicinity, the Bearcat area.
I believe Warzone D. It was the Australian, over there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it was the Australian. The Thais were at Bearcat. The Australians were down at Nui Dot. So in that same vicinity.
Wow. And this is a shot of Jim Shorten, he's teaching members of our team Mamba. They were gonna do a test for a POW snatch and ended up coming across ox pulling a cart, and underneath these logs up here were mines that they were getting ready to go plant on the road. So they
This is
had a
outside of out 10 school.
yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
Did you have any interesting interactions or anything happen in the field with your teaching or student days during instructing or anything?
No.
Wow. That's I mean, that's wild for a final exam. You know, you're out there doing a live fire situation.
Yeah.
Let's see. Daniel, I don't know if he's talking about for 10 school, but what anti-tracking techniques would you use for patrols, other than, of course, a lot of toe poppers on your trail?
The only time we would have put toe poppers out is if we were being actively pursued, and we didn't do that. It's just covering your back trail. Don't make it evident where you've been. Don't break tree limbs and walk through the heavier terrain. Stay off of lines of drift. But we didn't do anything specific to clear the back trail. We tried not to leave a trail.
I mean, that's one thing we came in, I think, gosh, I can't remember who it was. We were talking about the importance. A question came up of who was the most important person on the team. And usually, without a doubt, of course, other than the 1-0, but it was always in terms of moving the point man and the tail end Charlie or the rear man being just vitally important.
Well, the point man pretty much, from my experience, the point man pretty much determined the rate of march, because he would go out, he would listen and look, and when he was finally satisfied that it was safe to move, he would signal and we would move forward. And of course, the tail gunner, in case anybody had to continue to be alert, because if anybody had spotted us and tried to follow us, then he would be the one that would most likely be alerted to that.
With we've heard from other SOG men speaking on other interviews online, that the daily field coverage or ground coverage in a day is very low. How much ground would you cover in a day? How slow? How fast? How would y'all move?
Very slow.
Very.
It depended on the terrain. Now, if the terrain was more open, then you would move a little bit faster. But if it was thick, then it would be, again, we're trying to use the terrain for cover and concealment, for concealment, not to be discovered. So you can't be making a lot of noise as you're going through that type of terrain. And sometimes I was kind of surprised myself when I would retrace on the map the distance that we had traveled. And I say, geez, that wasn't very far.
I was surprised because I can't even remember. It was a shocking distance that they mentioned they covered in a day, and I was like, good Lord, I can't believe. I mean, I think it was walk 5 minutes or 10 minutes or what have you, and then stop 10 minutes and stuff like that. I was like, wow, that's but when you're all alone like that, you gotta be careful.
There was a place up toward the tri-border area that's called the Wasteland. And the Wasteland was pretty open. And Kirby Smith and I were together one time, and we launched out of one of the border camps. And we were out in the field, and you could see for a pretty long distance. All of a sudden, we were shocked. It looked like the whole whole hillside at some distance from us, but it looked like the whole hillside was moving. Thought, what in the heck? Well, it turned out it was a large herd of some kind of animals. Wow. And but it was startling because we thought, oh, we're in a lot of trouble. But so in terrain like that, you could move pretty fast. And Kirby, I don't if you've talked to Kirby, he had a mission. You had at times you had a small map, and your AO only covered about, was it 10 square kilometers or something, which isn't a lot. And then you had a buffer zone outside that if you strayed outside of that, then aviation, you'd be like, at least, especially in Bambi and out of Bambi-Tuit, or out of in the south, they had hunter-killer teams that were out. So if you strayed outside of that, which we did one time, Randy and I did one time, accidentally, and then you're fair game. They're not going to ask who you are. They just see people on the ground. You're not in a designated AO. So that was pucker factor time, and we hustled back to where we had get back within our AO. But sometimes people would be inserted well outside their AO. So you were outside of any map coverage that you had. And it was just the kind of error that takes place. And you'd start to match the terrain or the map to the terrain. And you say, it doesn't look quite right, but that hill there, that must be that right over there. And of course it wasn't. And if I recall correctly, Kirby one time had been inserted in an area way outside his AO, and had ended up walking through a base camp. And they were discovered, and they did travel a long way, but they were running to get away from the people that were pursuing. But other than that, I don't know of people trying to move too rapidly.
Yeah, like you said, unless you're
aware of what's going on around you. And one of the things that impressed me was you would hear what sounded like a bunch of bees or something buzzing. And then you'd start to hear more distinct sounds, and you'd realize that it wasn't bees, it was human beings.
Ooh.
And I don't know if other people had the same experience or not, but I did on several occasions. And on a couple, it turned out to be people. On the others, it was just buzzing bees.
With you being at two different AOs, did you come across any weird animal encounters? Elephants, of course, snakes and spiders, I'm sure, but did you see any tigers or anything like that while you were out and about?
The only incident I had was when I first went out with Dale. We went into RON, and I didn't wear a hat, a brimmed hat. And it rained like crazy. I had hair at that time. It rained like crazy, and I almost drowned. I couldn't. I tried to put my hand over my nose to deflect the water, and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't find a way to breathe where the water wasn't coursing over my nostrils. But the next morning, when we were getting ready to move, there was this big pile of poop next to me. Well, an elephant had defecated right next to me, and neither one of us knew the other one was there. So could have very easily been stepped on, but fortunately he didn't.
Stepped on or pooped on. It sounds like you're pretty lucky you didn't catch a warm poop to wake up to that morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, Alex, it is insane. Rain so thick you can't even breathe.
Yeah.
That's like Forrest Gump, all those kinds of rains, but he didn't mention the I can't breathe kind of rain.
Well, I got a brimmed hat after that.
I can imagine you did. That was
So,
probably the first thing you went and got was a brimmed
yeah,
hat.
yeah, it was.
Um, Alex is since we're talking patrol still. Alex would like to know, can you describe what it was like to go from such a high-speed job and then back? We're jumping timeline-wise, but high-speed job back to the States, and what was it like to readjust?
Yeah, I had to go through an attitude adjustment because I got to Devon's and I was accustomed to realistic training, and I didn't feel that the training that we were receiving was realistic, and so I had to be snapped back into reality, new environment, new rules,
Close to the flagpole.
straighten up and fly right.
Wow, I can only imagine what that was like. It had to be tough. I mean, there y'all are. I don't mean this as a derogatory term, but y'all being cowboys and having to come back and I mean play spit shine polished SF trooper at the base. I can only imagine the time it took to get reacquainted with that life.
Yeah.
um. This is one that comes up often, and I've always wondered because I've got a messy stomach. Did you eat anything specific or not eat anything specific to avoid going to the bathroom while in the field?
Yeah, I've tried to avoid that. I remember one incident that a guy they came across a NVA who was uh,
Pooping.
defecating, and his weapon was on the ground beside him. They tried to
Oh,
get him to Chu Hoi because they wanted to get a PW because that was your unstated second mission. If you get a PW, you get a PW. But he panicked, grabbed his weapon, and they ended up shooting him. But the food, I didn't really care for most of the food that was available. I didn't want to use my water to reconstitute dry meals, so I would buy a can of SpaghettiOs or something like that, and I'd take it back and I'd paint the cans, take the labels off, paint the cans black, and all that, and I would eat one of those a day.
did you going out for a mission? Were you a guy that ate breakfast that morning before going out, or did you abstain from meals as you were going out?
I don't really recall. I don't think I
I
don't
would have been
remember.
too nervous.
Honestly,
I
don't
could.
remember.
Yeah, I couldn't have eaten. I would have vomited
Yeah,
or
yeah, I probably abstained for that very reason because I was certainly didn't want to have to go to drop my drawers in the field.
that's all. I mean, that's always what I'm thinking about. Jumping off, and as soon as you jump off, bathroom, I gotta go.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned a little bit about this a second ago, but I think a little bit more would be interesting considering again you're a 2 AO veteran. What was your standard procedure for RON? Remain overnight for those of y'all that don't, or rest overnight who don't know what RON means.
Remain overnight. I think it's actually an Air Force term.
Mhm.
But yeah, before going into ROM, we would try to identify a place that was nice and thick that looked like it was, people would have to make noise if they wanted to try to get to you. Go past it, or uh, not go directly in it, but got dark enough where hopefully if somebody did observe you, couldn't see exactly.
And were y'all set up to where when you got into quote unquote that final settled RON, what was your security posture? I know a lot of guys said, "Ain't no way I'm sleeping and most of the guys ain't sleeping on this team while we're in the field. Other guys were a little more lax, and I've heard people going as far as 25% security. What was your rule for sleep and security?
We concluded that somebody's going to be awake all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you were within touching distance of each other. And you're going to, and like me, I don't even now, I mean, it's just natural for me that if even sleeping in a bed, I'm going to wake up all through the night, roll over, go back to sleep. So we didn't have a particular schedule established where somebody be awake, other people would sleep. We just felt that if there was something, somebody would be awake and be able to alert the remainder of the team.
And would you mentioned being in touching so close you could touch, were y'all in a wagon wheel? What would y'all's sleeping arrangements be?
Well, depending on terrain, when it's real thick and they've got a whole lot of bushes and stuff like that, little nice symmetrical configurations don't work too well. So you just like kind of all clumped together basically, and be prepared to observe in different directions or listen primarily at night in different directions, and then be able to engage without shooting each other.
Did y'all have any bad incidents for RONs to where y'all got encroached upon or anything like that?
No.
I've not seen this pop up yet, but it might. But I'll go ahead and ask anyways. Were y'all sleeping on the ground? Did any guys have any stuff they'd roll out for semi comfort, or were y'all just laying on your packs and go to sleep, so to speak?
No, the only thing we do is open up our web gear, open up your trousers, try to air out a little bit, and that's the way, because you had to be. Our feeling was that you couldn't be fumbling around with stuff if you were surprised.
Had to be ready to go at a drop of a hat.
Right.
Wow. Oh wow, we've got a SOG son in the chat today. Jason is with us. Hi Leon, this is Jack Damus' oldest son. I know he thought of you in high regards. Thank you for your service and being a great friend to him.
Jack was a super guy.
It's been an honor to get to.
Good to see you.
Absolutely. I wanted to get his comment up there. He's been a great source of information, and getting to share with him all my research and talking to y'all and getting him reconnected with guys. He's a stellar guy. Great service and great friend. Glad you're here with us, Jay. Always glad to have you in the chats with us. We've got one more patrol. Yeah, one more patrol question real quick. Alex would like to know, I guess based on considering both of your AOs, how many times did you have to call for air support to save an untenable situation, and what was the most effective form of air support in your experience?
Again, the most effective, you're talking about signaling and controlling it?
No, firepower wise this time.
Well, the only thing we had in Bambi to it, we did have the Charlie model gunships. And we did have up north, we had the Green Hornet. The bad thing about the Green Hornet was we were in a fairly open area. We had people to our right, and we started to move towards an extraction point, and the helicopter, in order to fire up the area on either side with the miniguns, had to fly directly over you. I saw the helicopter setting up, and I started to get up to tell the guys, let's go. And one of the indigs pulled me down just as the rounds started shattering actually they were like dead tree limbs and stuff above me. And what had happened was, I'm not sure if the pilot lost track of exactly where we were, but he was off to one side. So he didn't go directly over us. And in fact, we ended up almost in the impact area. Those kinds of things happen. And of course, the other gunships were even a little more delicate because of the fact that they're firing from a further distance and they're trying to locate you on the ground. They hopefully have located you on the ground. But as far as effective fire support, yeah, the gunships were great.
Now at CCN, where this will come up as well, were y'all having y'all had the SPADs? Were y'all ever using the Spooky Shadow or whatever Spectre, whichever incarnation you'd like to call it? Did y'all get to use them up north?
We didn't.
No.
One of the things. The thing that happened to us at CCN, where it wasn't really gun support, it was again the air crews weren't necessarily, well, they weren't familiar with our AO. They weren't familiar with our mission, so we left. I don't want to. I might be mixing up a couple of missions. But as far as getting out to the AO, but I think we left Camduck. We are not Camduck. We left. It's the one that I was telling you about. Where
Loy?
No, this is on the coast. Chulai, I think, was the name of the
yes,
base.
sir.
And we went out to Camduck, and that's where we did the circling around and went through. That wasn't the one that I had talked about before. At any rate, about the tools on the cultivated rows. And so we went out. The helicopter did not refuel after going all that way across Vietnam. We went into Laos, and when they put us on the LZ, instead of getting us as close to the vegetation and the cover as concealment as we could, he ended up putting us on a piece of ground that was like a manicured lawn. So he leaves, and I'm the 1-0, or I'm the 1-1 on this team, so I have the radio. And we're going through elephant grass, and we're getting cut up and trying to get over into the wood line. The Covey calls the insert ship and asks how much loiter time he has left. And he says, if I have 5 more minutes, I'm pushing it. Okay. So we went ahead and gave him a team okay. Well, so they leave. And shortly after that, we went into a Y of two ridge lines. So we had to go one way or the other, and ran into an ambush because these guys were waiting. You know, they heard the helicopters come in. I guess they had LZ watches and people nearby. So I was a little bit further back in the formation of the 6 of us, and the point man ran into trying to go across the ridge line. Somebody threw a grenade at him. Well, they opened up on him and threw a grenade, and he hit the ground, put his rucksack over his head, and the rucksack took the brunt of the grenade blast. So then they tried to flank us, and as they came over the hill, then we engaged with those guys, and that, I guess, caused them to back off. We went down in this little valley. We were separated a little bit. We went down in the valley. We got up on the other ridge line, and they started shooting from like signals around. You could hear them. So they start closing in. And then a group of them ran down towards the open area that we just come in on. There's about 6 or 7 of them, I guess, ran down that valley, that little cut that we had just crossed. And so there we are, we're trapped. And we made contact with the FAC. And to make a long story short, we were a little concerned, and I told Kirby, I says, Kirby, up here they do night extractions all the time because it was getting on towards dark. And they did. They extracted us after dark. They got us out, and we go down into this valley. The helicopters are overhead. They're communicating back and forth. And finally, they said, telling me something. I forget what it was. But at any rate, all of a sudden, this helicopter is coming down towards us, and then he turns his floodlight on. And so I called the Covey writer, and I says, is this an exfil chopper or what? And he says, if you can all get on that helicopter, get on it. And so they came down. They're chopping their way through the bamboo that's up on one side. And when they strike bamboo, it sounds just like heavy caliber fire. And so I told him, I don't know if it's bamboo or they're taking fire. At any rate, we got on the helicopter, and then flying back, they're dropping flares, some aircraft up ahead, so that the pilots can see the higher terrain that we're flying through and don't strike a mountain or something. And we got out. Then a little later, I didn't think that much of it, but later on, when we got back to, after we were back to Da Nang, Chief SOG came up, and he was talking to the base commander, and the base commander said, we pulled our first team after dark. And I thought, ooh, I'm glad I didn't know that at the time, because I had this sense of confidence that they had experience doing that and we were going to be okay. I didn't know that we were the guinea pigs.
That's Lord. Thank goodness it went off without a hitch, though. Wow.
Yeah, it went up.
Frank was curious, did you have any run-ins with Billy Waugh?
Yeah, I got to know Billy very well. We were at Bamituit together, and we're not buddies, but we saw each other all the time. It seemed a long time when they were practicing their or preparing for their halo insert. And at Da Nang, when we went up from Bamituit, he became the Recon Company Sergeant Major, I believe. At any rate, he kind of represented the group of us that came up from Bamituit. And then, of course, we had been in the same. I live in the Tampa area, so we were in the same SFA chapter here.
Wow, quite the man. I was lucky enough to get to speak to him there at the end a few times, and boy, he was full of piss and vinegar right there till the end.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Still trapped too. He was still talking about his work in Oscar 8 and those jumps and training folks at Longton, and it's amazing to hear from a legend like that recounting his service. It's y'all definitely were giants. It's amazing. I'm honored to be able to speak with you gentlemen. Alex would like to know, and I'm taking it, this is meaning it both. Who in the Recon Company did you most look up to in your time running Recon? Was there anyone you tried to emulate in some way?
No, I can't say that. I kind of held everybody
in high regard.
I considered everybody the same level. I did know Baby Son, and of course he had a very good reputation. But other than that, I think it was like I just kind of had respect for everybody that I worked with equally.
Yeah, and there's Baby Son right there. Sadly, he did he join your team when you ended up leaving? Was he with Fer-de-Lance when they made that ill-fated jump?
It wasn't a jump.
Oh, I thought they were on a jump mission that day.
No, they were on the ground. They made contact. I think Baby Son was, from my understanding, Baby Son was killed pretty early in the contact. Fred was struck in the chest, I believe, and he had transponder where he could, try to direct fire, aviation support, and he had, I don't know if it was a result of being struck or not, but he had dropped the transport bounder down a cliff, or it had fallen down a cliff. And if I may be wrong, but I think the team tried to stay with him until he was gone, and then they went their separate ways, or they tried to get out collectively. I don't know.
Yeah, he definitely a legend. It's between I get conflicting reports between him and Jerry Shriver, who had the most recon missions run. I mean, some people put him at 60. Some say they were right at 90 when Baby Son went missing, and Jerry may have been on his 100th mission. Both very sad. They were in it for a long, long time, and was bit by the bug, and evidently just couldn't quit it.
Right. I think Jerry Shriver, though, was on. Now he may have run recon at one time, but I think he was on an exploitation company when he disappeared.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Man. And Baby Son had some experience down at CCS with that's where I got mixed up. He had some static line inserts, and I'd gotten mixed up. If I'm not mistaken, he was actually on 2. I know of one man that I speak to, Mr. Ernie Aker, who was on one of them with him, and quite the he speaks very highly of him. It's quite the trooper.
Yeah.
Let's see. Daniel was curious about kind of, we may have gotten into it a little bit. What was the mentality and the atmosphere on the base between differences between CCS and CCN?
CCS was very primitive. The environment, like I told you, it's kind of like an old West village or something, a little township. CCN was very manicured. You were on the beach, had the concrete facade over the sandbag defenses or protection on the hooches. It's a formation of some kind of Bamituit, I guess. So it was a lot more upscale, I guess, and a lot more organized socially. And clubs. We had different clubs at Da Nang. Had a recon club, and then there was the admin club, and I don't know, they had at least a couple of them.
And then teams would have little clubs in their hooches as well, little unsanctioned little hangouts as well.
Had a little bar or something, yeah. Have a party in the hooch. But we did that at Bamituit too.
Yeah. I've heard some good ones. That's quite the I mean, like you said, old West Village compared to being right on the beach, like you're at Florida or something.
Yeah.
Very, very wild.
And somebody could always identify you so you're from Bamituit, aren't you? Because you had that red mud or that red clay embedded in your boots and your fatigues.
Anytime I post a picture of the base or some of the guys in a picture walking and they've got mud or there's mud standing, and guys will say the Bamituit mud, or either some will say I've still got mud on stuff from that I brought home with that mud still on it. So very, very funny. And I kind of can I mean, not meaning any ill respect or anything to anyone, but so CCS seemed like it was the redheaded stepchild, if you will, of the SOG group. Y'all seem to be a little more smaller and close knit. It really seemed like a real brotherhood. Not saying CCN and the guys weren't close, but I mean everybody down there seemed like they were close down at CCS.
I think that's an accurate description. Operationally, we were different. They had what they called ASTs, at Area Specialist Teams at Da Nang. We didn't. We did all our own VRs. So we were accustomed to looking at the AO ourselves, taking our own photographs, looking at the areas we wanted to look at, by directing the pilot, whether it be a helicopter or a fixed wing plane. Whereas at Da Nang, they had the ASTs. You didn't see the AO until you went in.
Wow, that I didn't realize that. That is a big difference, especially when you're on the ground. You'd like to be the one doing the VR and doing that. Jason would like to know, as we start to transition towards the end here, who was the biggest man that you saw in SOG running recon, and who was the smallest? I think we just saw the smallest, but I'll be anxious to hear.
Yeah, Baby Son was probably about the smallest. There were a couple of big guys. Jim Wheeler.
Oh yeah, Chemo.
Chemo, yeah. Was probably one of the bigger guys. Andre Smith was a big man. The thing about recon, though, is it was harder for a bigger man to run recon because the smaller man found it easier to negotiate the terrain, get in and out of go through the heavy undergrowth and that. So,
not to mention being injured and smaller men having to
carry it, yeah. Right.
We had a joke. One of our prior guests, Tony Love, ran with RT California, Joe Walker's team, and Joe was injured. And Big Bob Barnes, was a semi-pro football player and was probably still 265, 270, 6'3" or so. And they made the joke after one mission, the yards, and Tony said, if you get hurt and we can't carry you out, we're going to have to cut you up into tiny pieces and bring you back in a knapsack.
Yeah.
And finally he realized, he's like, I've done enough. I've run enough. He went and ran the bar and took care of payroll and stuff. So he realized it was going to get people hurt, trying to make sure he was okay if he got hurt. So,
or maybe go to the exploitation company or something where there's more support, more people, more aviation.
Absolutely. Oh wow, we just had a slew of questions come in. Yes, but yeah, Baby Son did go. He was, I don't know if it was in the head immediately, but yes, he fell down the cliff. He said he was hit in the worst kind of way, and that was the last they heard.
Well, that was Baby Son. I mean, that was
Gassman.
Gassman. Okay. I think Baby Son was prone on the ground, and again, this is all secondhand, obviously.
Yes, sir.
But I think it was said that Baby Son was on the ground and he had reached back to get another magazine and was struck through the head. And then Fred had the emergency signaling devices, a transponder or whatever, that I guess it was a transponder. He was going to try to control the air support with. And he radioed back that he had been hit in the worst way, and they assumed that was in the chest, and that he had dropped the transponder, and the transponder had dropped over the cliff. Now, I don't know if he went over the cliff or not, because the bodies were never recovered, to my knowledge.
No, sir. There's still, sadly, BNR and missing. I've still talked to men that go over there with I can't remember now. Of course, I'll forget it. The joint personnel or the team name that it's been changed to, but still no luck, sadly. And with that Laotian soil as acidic and it is, they might not ever sadly get him back. It's very sad to even think that, but that's the truth of warfare. But he was a legend.
And also, no, I don't believe they've ever resolved Stroheim.
No, sir. And from a lot of the talks, I know he was up there when you were. A lot of folks think that some thinks he was dead, but a lot of people think they got him alive and have been lying about him. But who knows what But it sounded like he was in the tree and he was
shot up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard Mr. Nick Brockhausen speak at length, and from what he said after actually being on the ground, I have a hard time believing Mr. Stroheim made it through that, sadly. Well, actually, it's a good thing because being captured alive would have been infinitely worse.
I think a Lieutenant Entrecon, I think it was Lieutenant
Danny, yes, sir.
I don't think they've ever resolved whether he was captured or not. They thought he was captured, I believe, but never been resolved.
RT Alaska, Danny Entrecon, I believe Jim Hollingsworth, and gosh, I can't believe I'm forgetting the last man's name, but those two. His son is online, and he's a great young man. Well, hell, he's older than me. He's a great guy, I should say. We've got a lot of questions that just came in.
That's another name. Yeah, slips my mind right now.
I honestly don't see how y'all have the recall that y'all did as much as y'all were doing. I mean, it's amazing. Y'all remember what y'all do. Jason was wanting to know, did you get to work with his dad, Jack, through the years, ever on recon or anything?
Not on recon. We worked together, though, after we got out of the Army.
Oh, okay. Wow. There's a question about Jake. His grandfather was a OV-10 or a FAC pilot, and I'm sorry. Let me find his name. Sorry, guys. I had it up here, and I had it up. Here we go. I doubt he knew his name since Granddaddy was FAC, but it was Captain Stephen L. Bennett, Covey 87, April to June 29th, 1972.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I didn't know any of the really any of the pilots personally. Now, sometimes we would socialize, but in a group. So, but as far as knowing him personally, no. Sorry,
Stephen. I just took a picture of that, Stephen, and I'll start asking some of the guys because I know a few of the guys that were up there at the very end, and you mentioned somewhere else about something that's got some information. So I'll start looking into that for you and see if I can help you out find anybody that knew your father or your grandfather. I'm sorry. He mentioned, here we go. As we know, he didn't know, but his father actually was shot down or shot and ended up ditching in the Gulf as a Covey driver, as a FAC. So that was his last mission for very interesting mission there to close it out on.
Scary.
Very, very. We're going to get starting here towards the end. So you can speak a little bit about El Salvador if you would be kind enough to do that. But right here, we've got a very interesting question by Jason. What was the best example of how determined you saw the enemy was? Meaning coming after y'all, doing something, laying their life down, or just sheer ferocity.
Yeah, no, I didn't have an experience like that.
Okay, we've heard crazy tales of them, stacking or bodies being stacked up of the dead, using them as their own little bunker, so to speak, and stuff like that. So we weren't sure if you ever had a hairy situation like that.
I personally did not. No.
Okay, but they that's for sure. They were determined.
You talked to Hendricks?
Rick?
Yeah.
Rich? No, sir. I met him last year at SOAR, but I've not been able to link up with him as of yet. I'm trying to get with him and
Well,
Mr.
I think
Beasley.
Rick had an experience just like what you're talking about. In fact, if I recall correctly, he picked up a AK-47 one of them was carrying, and he wanted to shoot him with the AK-47. And when they got back to base, everything has to be that belonged to the enemy, was enemy equipment, had to be turned in and examined by intel people. And they told him it was a good thing that he didn't try to fire the weapon because it was full of pole bean ammunition or explosive ammunition.
The eldest son, as it later came to be known.
They change the names of these things all the time.
Italian green pole bean, or Italian green pole bean, and then eldest son. That is crazy stuff. Crazy stuff.
Anyway, I think that incident that you just related is one or very similar to the one that he experienced.
Did he earned a DSC, did he not?
Correct.
Okay. I've heard a terrible story about Abrams and how he treated him that day, handing out that award, I should say.
Oh, really? Yeah,
yeah,
never.
He was being a little down on SF, saying I'll make sure that he doesn't get, because they were thinking they were going to try and upgrade it to the Medal of Honor, at least put paperwork in, and he got word, and someone, a SOG man, as he was walking off, caught it. He said, I'll see to it that young man never gets the Medal of Honor while I'm in charge. Something to that effect. And I said,
well, Abrams says, didn't like SF too.
Oh, I had a absolute hatred for y'all, and I just can't get over that. I mean, there y'all are getting all this intel and doing all this stuff, and he hates y'all's guts. What a man. And not in a good way. Not to denigrate his prior service and all of that, because he was a soldier.
He was a great soldier and has a great reputation through World War II.
But to treat y'all like that, and Colonel Rault, that's a row. That's just despicable how he did that. Okay, now that we're getting into we're gonna close, since I've had you 2 hours now. We're gonna start talk. Yes, sir. And I'm thank you again for sitting with us today. But could you speak about what it was like you leaving or finishing up in Vietnam with CCN and then going into FANC, and describe a little bit about FANC, and then what it was like leaving and doing what you did with being one of the 55.
Well, FANC was a completely different type of mission. It was a training mission for the Cambodian Army. Mm-hmm. And so we worked, it was a tri-service type of operation. We had Americans, Australians, and New Zealanders. And initially we were separate. The Americans, the SF people, would be with the battalions, and then we would go to the field with them. We would accompany them through training. We would accompany them in the field, and we would take care of all their needs. And the Australians and New Zealanders were training cadre, so they would present the classes. After a little while, though, they decided they wanted to integrate people, so we were on a team with a captain, an Australian captain, and a Australian warrant officer, and all super people. But their training was considerably different from ours. In fact, they went, before being assigned to one of the camps, either Long Tan or
Dong Batin, maybe.
Well, Dong Batin was farther north. I think we were originally at a place called God, I forget the name of the place, but anyway, it was on the border, and the guys kept going AWOL, walking back home. So they moved them over over to Long Hai. So the Long Hai people, though, there was already a Mike force that was there. So couldn't be a Mike force. We couldn't be Long Hai, so we were Phuc Tui Training Battalion. So we were named after the province as opposed to the city. But I forgot where I was going with this.
Just basically what y'all were training them. What were y'all training them to do? What, were they going to be running recon? Were they going to be pitched
No,
battles against the NVA or?
no, yeah, they'd start off as individual training, and some of the people were the more advanced training, the communications, the medical, and things of that nature were taught individually at a different location. The ones that we worked with were regular infantry type training, formations, weapons and implementation, things like that. And so we would start off with squads, and then go to platoon, and then to company, and then at the end we would have a combined battalion exercise. And it was an experience working with them, because some of them were Muslim, and they were very primitive people. Very nice.
It's amazing because going through, and especially guys, if y'all don't have these books and you're a SOG fan, I know they're expensive, but if you don't have these collections of Jason Hardy's books, and you're a SOG fan, you're really missing out, not only in amazing photos, but information. It was amazing to me to find out how many of you SOG men, either during your tour or after your tour, went to the FENC program. Cliff Newman, Larry Trimble, you, Ken Bowray, and on and on. But with y'all being SF and SOG, I would have thought y'all would have been doing a little more specialized reconnaissance training or something like that. Were there any groups that paired off into that, or was it?
No, I can't say no, because there may have been. I wasn't aware of it. But the reason that came about was that after Lon Nol ousted Sihanouk, I think it was, in Cambodia, and became started fighting the Khmer Rouge and the North Vietnamese. There was a conflict between the indigenous Vietnamese who lived in Cambodia, and the Cambodians attacked them and were killing them in large numbers, and they were floating down the rivers. So I think Nguyen Van Tu and Lon Nol then came to an agreement that said, look, we will repatriate to Vietnam those Vietnamese ethnics that are in your country. And Lon Nol said, okay, that's good. But what I want in return are my soldiers trained by Special Forces soldiers, because he had an experience already with what had been the Mike Force Cambodian soldiers. And they were, of course, very well trained. They were very proficient and very effective, but they used them up real quickly. So that was the reason that SF got involved, to my knowledge, with the training of the Cambodian battalions.
And did y'all? I know Mr. Cliff Newman. He had a bad incident training and lost his foot. Did y'all go into combat at all with them? I know training, I guess, going out could see live fire, but did y'all specifically go into combat with them as well?
Yes, because on the final exercise, we would go with them in the field.
Any of that? Did you did y'all have any incidents pop up like that, or did they pass pretty good and all that?
No, everything was it was kind of disappointing, because they had the training. For example, the guy I was attending a training course by one of the guys, and he was showing all of these soldiers these M79 rounds that were out of the weapon, but they were just laying on the ground there. And he said, do not touch these. Do not touch them. Do not kick them. Do not do anything. Well, you know, as soon as you say that, you put your finger in your ears, because that's exactly what they're going to do. And they would. They could break anything. They could break weapons that I thought were indestructible. But I mean, again, wonderful people. But I was there when they had the moon landing. And we would have a graduation dinner at a nearby hotel that had a nice restaurant. And we were sitting there, and the way these guys were selected to be officers were that they were school teachers, they had a little education, or they were family friends of somebody, or anyway, it wasn't based, very few of them. I only ran into one who was actually a trained military officer who had gone through the French military academy. But so this guy is sitting next to me, this captain, and he asked me, do you really believe they landed a man on the moon? And I said, well, I didn't know what to tell him. And I asked, well, what do you think? And he thought for a moment, and he just shook his head and said, no, there was no way he could perceive that.
Speaking of that, I was just flipping around looking at it. I've spoke. Gosh, I knew I'd blank on who exactly was, but somebody was out the night it happened, and they got a special radio message saying that Armstrong was on the moon, and the American on the radio was as quiet as he could be, was shocked and was, wow, we finally did it. And they looked over and said, Trung C, what's wrong? What's wrong? And he's like, we just landed on the moon. And they looked up and he said, looking for king bees and all of that, seeing if they were on the way up to the moon. He said, Trung C, how king bee get that far up? And he said, they didn't take the king bee this time. They got on a rocket. He said, Trung C, you mean they strap men on rockets and shoot them? And they didn't get it. And then when they finally understood what it was, they were like, no, Trung C, they no go to the moon. I always loved that.
Yeah.
Sweet care, just not a care in the world, just innocent. And I love hearing stories of y'all with y'all's yards, Vietnamese, your Cambods. It's great stuff. Well, I mean, considering we've covered the heck out of your Vietnam here for 2 hours, could you just to close us out? Because I'm always asked, and I'm not very familiar, and since we've got you here, I'd love to have you explain a little bit to us what in El Salvador was going on. That's a huge question for you to have to answer. But what was the one of the 55? What were you doing in El Salvador after Vietnam?
Myself and another man, Bruce Hazelwood, were the strategic site security assessment team. So we would go to different strategic sites, dams, the port facility, and other places that were considered bridges that they considered to be of strategic importance. And we would try to help them with their security arrangements. And later on, they decided they wanted to have they wanted to create a home defense force. And so they wanted one or the other of us to do that. And I was getting ready to get out of the Army, and I wanted to go into security. So I thought, well, I'd like to stay with the security. Bruce was going to stay longer, so he went with the what do they call it? Anyway, the home defense, and did a spectacular job on that. But that was it.
And to give people, I've been reading a little bit about it, but basically, it was wasn't it a communist? I hate the term insurrection, but they had kind of built a little network of guerrillas. I believe they had assassinated a priest during mass at one of the big one of the big El Salvador ceremonies or what have you, and it progressively got worse and worse. And I believe there was.
Romero, that you mean Romero was the leftist priest who was assassinated while conducting mass, or it was in his. I thought maybe you were talking about the UCA.
Yes,
that was a different one later on at the university there.
Oh, I didn't know about that one either. Wow. Okay.
They killed. God, I can't remember who it was. There were, but they went over to the university and they killed some people, and I think it was cadets or somebody that went over and killed them. And of course, Schaffelberger was assassinated, picking up his girlfriend at the. He was a SEAL, and he was a Mill Group body. He was single, had a girlfriend. He was picking her up at the UCA. Somebody grabbed her to divert his attention, and they assassinated him then in his vehicle. Those are just a couple of the incidents that happened while I was there.
I've seen some of the patches, and I've always wondered, because there were a few SOG men that were of the 55 military advisors, and I've noticed some of the patches that were created were looked like recon team patches, and some of them actually had the SOG bomb burst and the skull and all of that. Were y'all setting up anything like a SOG over there, or was this just basic military training that was?
Do you know Mike Kim?
Because I've been helping Mr. Greg Walker put together a speech that he gave yesterday morning at SOAR. I've just recently heard that name, but I do not know him. No, sir.
Okay, Mike was the advisor to. He's also Hawaiian, and he was the advisor to the PROL, and I don't remember what PROL stands for, but it was their recon unit that was over at Ilopango Air Force Base. Now, Mike did a lot of good work, and I know the guy that was his boss, and his boss had spoke very highly of him because we communicate, and the work that he did in helping to train and develop the capability of their reconnaissance unit, the PROL. I had nothing to do with it. I was dedicated to the program that we worked with, and so that's all I know about.
I've got an interesting, Mr. Greg. When you watch this, hopefully you won't be mad. I'm not going to show it all, but weirdly enough, Mike Kim's name just popped up, and so did PROL. So I'm going to show this to y'all.
So did who?
From Mr. Greg Walker, I found Guy Waggy, who was with RT Virginia and Cobra.
Waggy, yeah.
Yeah. He was with them in 82, and right here, he would return to El Salvador, where the unit came under the command of Mike Kim and Bill Frisbee. They conducted nonstop reconnaissance, intel gathering, and infiltration of guerrilla units, ambushes, and raids.
Not Fritzy, but Frisbee, I think, was the man's
Frisbee.
name.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So there are a few instances where he came up on here, and of course, there's Mr. Dennis,
yeah,
Frank Medina,
yeah, Sergeant Major,
and Chemo and Spider are mentioned in here because Mr. Medina led the long hair intel teams, and there's Chemo right there. And I'm not familiar, but
that's Jim. Oh yeah, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, Chemo. Okay, I forgot. I only became aware that they was going by Chemo now.
Yes, sir. I met him last year in his Hawaiian. He was wearing his Hawaiian shirt, and he's full Chemo now. So
yeah,
he's quite the guy. But here it says he had his own oversaw the elite selection, training, and deployment of the Salvadorian Navy SEALs called the Sharks. That's
Right.
pretty interesting.
Right.
I mean, there y'all are, SOG men and all of that, and y'all are coming in here and setting up some, from the sounds of it, some pretty interesting recon elements and military units. That's pretty interesting stuff going on there. I'm definitely gonna have to get Mr. Greg to help me out and give me a little more material to start reading up on y'all about. Let's see here.
I think Jim was out of the Army when he did that work.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it wasn't. But he's former SOG. So
yeah, I had something to where he had quite the career after he got out, to where he was doing a lot of secret squirrel stuff that was very interesting. I won't mention it on here for OPSEC, considering he's still out and about. I won't do that, but quite the guy. I had so much fun seeing him at in Las Vegas last year.
Yeah, he's a very personable guy.
He is. I know you've probably seen that photo of him with the AK and the skull, where he's nothing but in a loincloth with his war medallion. I'll send that one to you too as well. Then you got to see that one.
Okay. I'll look forward.
We've had you 2 hours and 15 minutes. Maybe, here in the future, if you'd be open, of course, we'd love to have you come back, because you're just a wealth of knowledge. So we'd love to have you if you'd be open to coming back. But
I hope I contribute something.
You most certainly did. We had so much to go through. I was just all over the place today. So we might have to nail it down on one particular thing and have you back, CCS or CCN or what have you. But is there anything else you'd like to say or share with people before we close out for the afternoon?
No, sir.
Okay, guys. You go ahead.
No, I said I think that's
okay.
Pretty much it for me.
Okay, guys. If y'all had any other questions, I don't think I see any more. Oh God, I'm sorry. I just saw that. Jake, his grandfather was killed when he ditched in the sea. I'm very sorry to hear that.
Yeah. I thought
Jason, I misread. I misread that, and I thought he was alive. I'm very sorry about that. Jason wanted to say thank you to you, and everyone is starting to say thank you. We'd love to have you back already. So you might already be roped into coming back to visiting here soon, sir.
It'd be a pleasure if I can.
Appreciate it.
And if I can contribute something, I'd like to.
You can, and you definitely have today. I think we had a record number of viewers in here and commenters. We had, I think, at one point in time, 48 people in here. So I know this is going to be at a lot of play and a lot of views. So I just want to thank you again for taking time to spend with us today. And we look forward to maybe in a week or two, a month, or what have you, when we can hook up again, having you back on.
Okay, it'd be a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, we're going to close out today, guys. And Mr. Leon, if you'd like to, when you get ready, you can just click the leave studio or leave button, and we'll shut her down for today.
All right, will do.
Yes, sir. You have a good day, and everybody else, y'all have a
button is.
It's down here underneath the thing. It should have a red X under leave studio. I'll hit the end stream and I can help you out.
All I had to do was read.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
You have a great day.
All right. Goodbye, folks.
See you. Bye. All right, guys. Well, I know we probably could have gone a lot longer, guys. We clearly, because we had CCS, CCN, FANC, 1-0 school, student, teacher, and then El Salvador. I could have gotten into Panama, but as you saw, we will be able to have him back. So I figured, 2 hours is good enough. We got a lot of good stuff out of that, and a lot of great questions today. Thank y'all, all of y'all that watched while we were on live, and those of y'all that have commented. Frank, very glad to have you in here. I hope you saw my email address. You'll have to get with me. Galil, glad to have you in here watching. Jason, I'm so glad you got to watch live and get to see Leon today. You know how long I've been trying. So does Jason. Knows how long I've been trying to set this up for us, and we finally got it. Jason, yeah, like the guy said, you're a Twitter superstar up here, blowing it up. Without him, we wouldn't have near the viewers we've been getting. And Alex, thank you. Mr. John Sobieski, wonderful, wonderful stuff today. I'll keep y'all updated on what we're going to be, what's coming up around the pike. I've got a few surprises that I'm going to hold on to. I've already let y'all know we're going to have Lynn on hopefully in November. But I've got a few surprises. One might be coming up very soon, so we're going to wait and see before I drop that news. But great show, wonderful, and without a doubt, we'll definitely be having Leon back. So y'all have a good day, good evening, and a good night. Thank y'all for watching live. If y'all are here with me live, y'all are the best. I will see y'all later on.